एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः तोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम् सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम्. Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsangh from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, as usual, we will be referring to the work Guruvachaka Kovai by Muruganar Swamigal. We will be reading 2 verses selected for us. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that will be followed by a practice session of 10 minutes of Atma-Uchara. After these 2 segments of reading, meditation on meaning, and practice of self-inquiry are completed, there will be summing up remarks by our President, Dr. Sharda, and that will be followed by the offering of Sri Ramanastotram by Vaibhavji and Pratnama verbally, and by Manjunathji from here plurally. We begin this evening's satsang by taking up the first verse, 436, sir. Verse number 436 appears in the segment Investigation into Truth. The other 2 succeeding segments are Meditation on the Truth and experience of the truth. Verse 436 is under the segment investigation into truth. The subsegment is mukti, liberation. Verse 436, all things are actually consciousness. All things are actually consciousness. When they are known as consciousness only and become completely subsumed in one's self, which is consciousness, differences are completely annihilated and your real nature shines. You should know that this is the incomparable liberation. All things are actually consciousness. When they are known as consciousness only and become completely subsumed in one's self, which is consciousness, differences are completely annihilated and your real nature shines. You should know that this is the incomparable liberation. So Bhagavan says that all things that we see are not names and forms, are not physical, mental or causal, but are all only consciousness. Now, when we take the practice of who am I, this weapon, this Brahmastram of who am I, will reveal the source of everything, the source of ego and the source of everything. As we have seen time and again in Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan gives this pointer that Karuvam Ahandai Undayin Anaitum Undagum. Ahandai Inrel Indranaitum. Ahandaye Yavumam. Just one step before coming to the truth of everything is consciousness, Bhagavan takes us to the point, everything is the ego. Everything is the ego. Now, when that ego is taken to its source, the pure consciousness, then everything transforms into consciousness. Everything is ego, is the preceding step. That ahandai undayin anaitum undagum. Only when the ego thought arises, everything else in all planes arises. If the ego thought is subsiding as in deep sleep, there is no object, subtle or gross. Therefore, all this that we see is only the ego. So first step is to understand all this is made of that thought form I. What is that thought form I? Who am I? When we take it to the source and find that the I is full of consciousness, we will find that everything is consciousness. As the pot is made of clay, as everything in many shapes, the utensils created are all made of clay in the potter's place. Everything is made of clay. Nay, is consciousness only. Is made of consciousness, is consciousness only. Because the making process, the idea behind the making, everything is consciousness. There is another approach to see this, how Bhagavan makes us see everything as the ego and then takes everything as the self, everything as consciousness. This is a technique used in Ribugita. In Ribugita, the oft repeated shlokas are: the waking state is inert, the dream state is inert, the sleep is inert. They'll say, then everything that is there is inert. Then in the very next sentence, everything is Brahman. Everything is Chit. Like that, the Ribhu Gita's refrain will keep going. First, everything is made into Jada. Then everything is made into Chaitanya. First, everything is made into limited. Then everything is made into unlimited. First, everything is made into lawlessness. Then everything is made into law. Now, the secret behind the everything is also seen when we see the first noble truth. The first noble truth is that birth is sorrow, growth is sorrow, illness is sorrow, and death is sorrow. To be joined with that you don't like is sorrow. To be separated from that which you like is sorrow. When everything is sorrow, everything becomes bliss. When everything is jada, everything becomes consciousness. When everything is ego, everything becomes the Atman. Now, how is this? What is the secret behind this? Is that when everything is ego, then ego cannot do anything about it. Ego becomes still. When everything is thought, then thought can do nothing about it. There can be no movement of thought. When everything is sorrow, it is not the birthday is celebrated and growth is celebrated and then illness and death are suffered. No. Everything is sorrow, then the mind becomes still. Any movement of the mind is sorrow. When we come to the point everything is sorrow, everything becomes bliss. The same thing we find because truth cannot have two different faces. When Bhagavan reveals to us, everything is the moment of your ego, everything is made of the I thought, then what can the I thought do about it? Any movement it does, it is egoistic. Therefore, it has to remain still. When everything is sorrow, what can the mind do? Any movement of the mind is sorrow. Then the mind becomes still. When the mind is still, everything is bliss. We find here, everything is made of consciousness. The preceding step is given in Ulladunarpadu, that everything is made of the I thought. But in who am I? What is the I thought? The I thought is annihilated. The I thought is destroyed and loses its form in the source, the pure consciousness. So, when they are known as consciousness, when everything is known as consciousness, only and only consciousness, then and become completely subsumed in oneself. Is there any difference between oneself and everything? There is no difference between oneself and everything because it is all the I. There is no I and that. The aham, idam changes and the pure consciousness shines as I. When all things are subsumed in the self, then all differences are completely annihilated. This is better, that is not better. If I get that, I will be happy. If I am moving away from this, I will be happy. All those things get annihilated. All differences which create samsara are completely annihilated when everything is consciousness. When everything is Rama, what is there for the bhakta to do except to merge in Rama? When everything is consciousness, the self, what is there for the vichari to do except to remain still? There is no movement. Then when everything is the consciousness, all differences are annihilated. Then that is the point where all desires are simultaneously fulfilled. The Paramartha Sthiti is there and your real nature shines. There is no your, there is no theirs. It is only conveniently used to indicate to the sadhaka, O sadhaka, your real nature as the consciousness and everything as consciousness shines. You should know that this is the incomparable realization or liberation. There is no comparison because where is the difference? And it is absolute liberation because there is nothing to be bound by. that when consciousness alone is unboundedly, unbrokenly, limitlessly, unconditionally present, where is the question of bondage? Where is the question of liberation? Bandha muktyati tamparam sukham vindati haji vastu daivika. The vastu is realized. The jiva which started as the sadhaka, it merges into the self, and the merging of that ego into the self makes one realize everything is consciousness. Bhagavan says to a devotee who sarcastically asks, when Bhagavan says the monkeys and the trees are the same as man, then the devotee, the visitor makes some sarcastic remarks. Then Bhagavan replies, why? The slabs of stone you are sitting on, they are also full of consciousness. When the ego subsides into the source, there is only consciousness. There is only the Satchitananda, the fullness of consciousness, the incomparable liberation, where all doings, all experiencing, all karma, all phala are all annihilated, are all removed, and one is in that bliss, in that unconditional awareness, in that ever-present self, which is one's real swarupa, one's real nature. The Brahmastram of Atma-Ucharan will not stop till that point is delivered, till everything that comes as obstruction is annihilated and the fullness of consciousness is revealed as our swarupa. Who am I? Will not stop. It will deliver us there. That is the Brahmastram that Bhagavan has given. So with Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit for 10 minutes of Atma-Ucharan. I'll set the timing for myself. Okay. Bhagavate Shri Ramananjali. We go on to the reading of the second verse. Verse number 710. This is appearing in the segment Meditation on the Truth. The subsegment is Japa. Meditation on the Truth, subsegment Japa, verse number 710. Deep-rooted diseases will not be even slightly eliminated by repeating the name of the medicine, but only by consuming it. Likewise, the fetter of samsara will not be surrendered solely by doing japa of Mahavakyas, such as Shivoham, I am Shiva, that expound the ultimate union. This is the japa. Deep-rooted diseases will not be even slightly eliminated by repeating the name of medicine, but only by consuming it. So when we have the symptom as fever, but the disease is far more deep-rooted, if we take medicine only for fever, hardly that will cure the disease. Therefore, Bhagavan says here through Muruganar Swamigal that deep-rooted diseases will not be even slightly eliminated. Imagine that there is a deep wound, and if one merely applies ointment on the skin that is adjacent to the wound, will it heal the wound? It won't heal the wound at all. There has to be deeper medicine applied internally and to every part of the wound so that it heals. Now, similarly, any sadhana, unless it is deep, it is not going to eliminate the ego. It is not going to eliminate the mind. Mere repetition of name, mere repeating the name of the medicine will not suffice. One has to consume it. Now, this is in no way to reduce the efficacy of japa mantras, but when Atma Vichara is there, in relation to that, if one practices Sivoham or I am that, Brahmaiva Aham or Aham Brahmasmi as a japa, Bhagavan says that is like applying superficial medicine to a very deep-rooted disease. Now, this is mentioned 2-3 times in Ulladunarpati. That is, when Ahasputam Tattvamasiti Vedaha, when the Vedas are almost shouting that thou art that thou art the truth, then instead of inquiring what is the truth of me, what is my truth, who am I, instead of doing that, merely to repeat Aham Brahmasmi is because there is no strength of mind, says Bhagavan in that verse in Ulladunarpadu. Now, therefore, the strength of mind, the tapasvic strength is indicated when one naturally takes to who am I, and who am I builds tapasvic strength. Let us see how. As each thought arises, if we pursue that thought, the energy of attention is now dissipated, because that thought is not going to remain as one. Literally, if we take a problem thought, suppose a problem thought comes in self-inquiry, immediately the mind may go to finding out its cause. Because in normal medicine treatment, in normal world, and in areas of logic, how a problem is solved, either we go to a solution which is led by additions to the problem, or we go to the cause of the problem and remove the cause. So the mind may move with the problem thought either to find out the cause. Who is the person who caused this difficulty for me? Is this person the right person? So that one thought of problem will multiply into many thoughts, and with each successive thought, the tapas is dissipated. The tapas, in simple terms, is energy of attention. The energy of attention is dissipated. On the other hand, even when we let go of single thought, with for whom is this thought, there is a gathering of tapasic energy. Now, in japa, what happens in japa sadhana is that many a time the japa is repeated with attention that can be diverted to other places, especially when the japa is stula, when the uccha mantatah chittajam japa dhyanam uttamam, says Bhagavan. In japa, better than the spoken japa is that japa which is done with the mere movement of the tongue, not the movement of the lips. And even better than that is the japa done with the mind. Even in the japa done with the mind, the experience of japa sadhana is that I too have practiced that, taking the japa sadhana from the Kanchi Mat. The abhyasa is that many a time the mind would be allowed to wander. Then we will suddenly realize that the japa has started again. Now, that is because the source of the mind is not searched for, and the mind is still holding itself superficially. The weight of vairagya is not put. Whereas, when one waits for each thought to arise, as each thought arises, we let it go, the vairagya is gathered, the tapasvic energy is gathered, and one is able to go with that strength to the root disease, the ego, which arises from the self. Now, of course, in spiritual instructions, Bhagavan says, dhyana, when japa becomes dhyana, the source of the mind is looked at. That is, when japa matures into dhyana, dhyanam uttamam, then one is able to see the outward movement and inward movement of the mind at its very source. So far as it is japa, the movement of the mind, the two movements of the mind, the outward going and the inward going, is not observed because one is in the clutches of that movement. Whereas in dhyana and in vichara, in dhyana after maturing and in vichara right from the beginning, one is able to observe the outward going of the mind, let go of the outward going of the mind, dip in with the inward going of the mind to hold who am I. So the power of who am I is what is suggested in this verse, that once one comes to self-inquiry, one should not spend time, or one should not, unless it is necessary because of the state of the mind, that one has to chant and gather oneself. Because in japa, we are remaining superfluous, and in vichara, the mind's movement as outward and inward is observed. The outward movement of the mind is dropped as the thought is dropped, and the inward movement of the mind is taken help of and one goes inside to the source, to who am I? That is why Bhagavan says in this verse, deep-rooted diseases like the ego, which comes in many forms. The ego's deep-rootedness is of such nature that we find that the intellect can claim even liberation for itself when it is very well bound. That is why statements like that those who say they know, they do not know, and those who say they do not know, they are the ones they know, are made because the intellect and the ego using the intellect are so subtle that they can falsely claim even liberation, let alone other meditational states. So, to remove this deep-rooted disease, which can even claim liberation itself, one should not merely stay with japa. This would have been experienced by us even in our school studies when we loudly read a book and try to register it. The registering would be very, very sporadic and with gaps. Whereas when one meditates it, when one just looks with the eyes and meditates it and reads it, the registering is far more clearer, because in the japa state, in the loud chanting state, what happens is lot of instrumentalities like the vocal cords, like the body itself, come in the way of the subtlety of the mind and creates gaps. That's why Bhagavan says the chanting of japa, when one can do self-inquiry, is like applying superficial medicines for deep-rooted disease. The moment one comes upon Bhagavan's teachings of self-inquiry, one should immediately start. And to help us, Bhagavan says, even a single thought, still, or a trace, or a small moment of time, takes us a long way towards the self. And this is a sadhana which applies the medicine right at the source of the disease. Even for beginners, the source of the disease itself is accessed. And there itself, the aushadam, the sanjeevani, is applied till one is completely cured of this deep-rooted malaise of ignorance or maya. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice of this sanjeevani, the parama aushadam, that which removes the bhavaroga, given by the bhavaroga Bishagvara, the greatest doctor of this bhavaroga. Bhagavan has given us this medicine which goes to the root of the disease. As soon as the ego rises, there itself you take it back to the source. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us apply this parama aushadam to the deep-rooted malaise of the rising ego and set ourselves free of this disease once and for all. Let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana. I request our President, Dr. Shabdaka, to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we have been able to not only do mananam, but also to sit for the practice of self-inquiry. And Bhagavan has told us that mere repetition is not sufficient. One must take the medicine. One must practice. While, as Nandakumarji said, it is not to cut down the efficacy. But Bhagavan says, even if it is repetition, what kind of repetition should be there? That was also pointed out to us by Nandakumarji. It should go to Chittajam Japadhyanam. It must become Japadhyanam. And it should also be Ajyadharaya Srotasasam. It should become continuous. When it becomes continuous, what happens? Then differences get obliterated. The point of japa is what was given to us in the first verse, to obliterate all differences, to cut away the tendency of the mind to go towards different objects. The point of repetition is that when you keep on repeating the same thing, the mind actually wants a variety. It wants to go from one to another. It sees difference. So when it keeps on repeating only one, when it holds on only to one as the supreme without bothering about any other thought, then everything becomes permeated by that one thought, by that one japa, by that one nama. As Nandakumarji has shared in an earlier satsang, he has told us how during one Girivalam, they felt that, they intuited that if everything Ashtamurti Bhrit Deva Pujanam, if everything is Bhagavan, if everything is consciousness, then everything goes only by oneness. Is so difficult that you make a differentiation. Since you want to make a differentiation, make a differentiation. Otherwise, look within. Even Bhagavan also says, if we look at the thoughts, what are all the thoughts? There's nothing apart from consciousness. But to accept the shadow, when people are told that everything in the mind there is only thoughts in the mind, then one of the first questions which will come is, what about feelings? What about feelings? Are feelings not different from thoughts? So, are feelings different from thoughts? This, when we do the inquiry only, we recognize that every experience is a thought. Only inquiry gives us that. So we recognize every experience is a thought. It's not different. So at the first level, self-inquiry brings about, by the experience itself, by our own experience, by our own watching, of our experiences, we recognize that every experience is a thought. Whether it's a physical experience or a mental experience, every experience is a thought. And then when one further watches, one recognizes every thought is only a manifestation of the I. Or because of the, initially Bhagavan says, because of the attention of the I. Without the I, the thought is not there. So then everything becomes the I. And if, as Kumarji sweetly said, that everything becomes the I, what is there for the I to do? Nothing is is there for it to do. Like all our life is in order to achieve something, in order to prove something, in order to get something, in order to become something. What are we struggling for? We keep struggling in order to achieve something, or in order to get something, to possess something. Or even if we don't want to possess anything, we want to become something. We want to become good. We want to become truthful. We want to become disciplined. We want to become something. So there is how is that possible? Because there is a duality. There is something which I am not, which I can become. I am thin, I can become fat. I am fat, I can become thin physically. Mentally, I am peaceful, I am agitated, I can become peaceful. I am disturbed, I can become not disturbed. I have got bad thoughts, I can get good thoughts. So I see this division all the time. But what happens when everything is I? What happens when everything is I? Then Bhagavan says, if everything is the supreme, then everything, Arunachala, when you are everything, then what can I say is good for me and what can I say is bad? Kurayum gunamum me allal yennenevatrai. Now when you become the good and you become the bad, what remains? Only Arunachala remains. Arunachala is everything. Consciousness is everything. And it is inquiry which actually establishes us in the knowledge of everything. Everything. Because what happens otherwise? Subtly, maybe not even consciously, we will tend to see everything other than us as everything. When we say everything, that's why Bhagavan told, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. That one means that if you have to say everything is Vasudeva, the Loka is Vasudeva Mayam, first I have to be also Vasudeva. I have to be Vasudeva. Then everything is automatically, says Bhagavan. Then everything automatically becomes Vasudeva. Then after that, no effort needs to be made. Because it is I who am making all the differences. And in the story, Bhagavan gives a story of Namdev. And when Namdev and all the great saints were there, Tukaram, Gorakumbha, the potter. And the potter was asked by Jnaneshwar, you tap all the saints here. See if they are properly ripened. And when he tapped each one of them and they all bowed their heads. And Namdev said, why should I bow my head? I am Vitthala's friend. And Gorakumbha said, this pot is not baked. He was insulted in front of everyone. He was in deep sorrow. He went to Vithala. Vithala said, if I tell you, you won't understand. Why didn't you submit like the others? Okay, go to one person, one sage in the forest. Namdev goes there. He sees an old man in a dilapidated temple, lying with his feet on the Shivalinga. And he says, oh my God, Vithala couldn't have sent me to this person. But he hears the old man calling out to him saying, Namdev, has Vithala sent you? Have you come? Oh, so this man must be great. Then he bows to him and says, but sir, you have your great one, you have your feet on the Shivalinga. And that old man says, is it so, my boy? I don't even know, I'm so old. I don't know where my feet are. And I don't have the strength to keep them anywhere else, to even to lift them or move them. So can you be kind enough to lift them and keep them where there is no Shivalinga? And Namdev, he lifts the feet of that person, and wherever he places the feet, there is a Shivalinga. And it is said in that story, and that's the most beautiful part, that ultimately finding no place to keep the feet, he puts them on his own lap and he himself becomes a Shivalinga. So the Guru's feet, when he takes it onto himself, when the touch of the Guru's feet comes, then we become, only when he becomes Shiva, That is Shivoham. That is the practice of, true practice of Shivoham. To become Shiva or to be Shiva, as Bhagavan says in Ulladinarpada, to be Shiva, to understand the truth of that statement through inquiry and diving into the heart and merging into that Shiva Tattva, the Arunachala Shiva Tattva, which Bhagavan says is Aham, to merge there by His grace. And Bhagavan, when He says this to us, He is blessing us with that. He is blessing us with the strength. When He says do this, He has already allowed us to do it. He's already blessed us with the grace to do it. So it is for us to simply enjoy that grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. May I ask Vaibhavji and Pratnamba to start the chanting?
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शूणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ द्रुतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः ॐ विराजगजलाकृतये नमः ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः ॐ पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः ॐ दक्षिणस्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईद्याय नमः। ॐ धूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्बोधस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिवृन्देन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मन्त्रमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादकसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋचान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अमरस्थितिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ पादविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ सौमाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवश सादात्म्यभावङ्गतः निर्दिष्टस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकां पुनः शेखरात् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नमः इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि। नमो महर्षि। दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವನುಳಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ. बोलो भगवान श्री राम की जय
जय
नमो रमणाकाय नमो रमण